morning and welcome to History News 101. I'm Lauren and this is my lovely partner Abby Green. It's a lovely day down here in Dixon, Tennessee.
Right you are, Lauren.
What is our topic today on History News 101?
Well, today we have what I think is a very interesting topic. Our topic is women's suffrage. Is something wrong?
Well, don't get me wrong. I'm plenty excited to talk about this. But, I don't know exactly what it is.
But you're a woman.
Yeah, so?
So, it's women's suffrage.
Don't get me wrong, I'm well versed in other feminist topics, just not this one in particular.
Well then, that's okay. We'll just educate you right after this short break. I had a cloud in your house, screaming, such as this one. All you have to do is take a singular can of Pepsi, and it's all gone. All you have to do now is hide the body of the remaining cloud. Come on, come on. Back to History News 101. Today our topic is women's suffrage, which took place from about 1848 to 1920.
Let's start with the basic facts. Abby, why don't you get this roller coaster started?
Okay, well first off, women's suffrage movement wasn't just about the right to vote. It was most definitely involved, but it wasn't the only right women wanted. Women wanted the right to vote, the right to own property, and the right to an education.
That's interesting. Did this include black women too?
Absolutely. Just about every woman took part in the women's suffrage movement if she could.
Wow, this sounds like an exciting time.
It was. The only issue is that no one took them seriously. Ye old feminists such as Susan B. Anthony fought for rights alongside African Americans for their rights as well as women's rights. And if you recall, who got their rights first?
African Americans.
And who had to wait until the 1920s to get their rights?
Women?
Exactly.
So, you mentioned Susan B. Anthony, right?
I did.
Wasn't she, like, really big in the women's suffrage movement or something?
She was one of the most well-known out of the suffragettes.
Actually, we have Susan B. Anthony with us here today. Stay tuned to hear from Susan B. Anthony right after this short break.
Gary, where is Susan B. Anthony?
She's dead.
She's dead! She's dead! What'd you do with her? When?
Since now.
Oh. Welcome back to History News 101. Here with us today we have the brilliant Susan B. Anthony.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here to talk about what I'm passionate about.
We are glad to have you. How long have you been a suffragette?
I've been a suffragette for about 50 years. I began in 1850.
Oh my goodness, that's a long time. Tell us some of the things you did during that time.
Well, I traveled quite often to make speeches about women's suffrage. And in my own form of protest, I actually cast a vote in the 1872 election. I was soon caught and arrested, and when they asked me to pay the fine, I refused.
Wait, why did you refuse?
I felt as if... No, I knew that I didn't do anything wrong.
Interesting. Did you live to see the 19th Amendment come into play?
Sadly, no. I died on March 13th, 1906. But I did encourage other suffragettes to keep going and fighting for what is right. Like I always used to say, failure is impossible.
Interesting. Anything more you'd like to tell us?
Unfortunately, I have to get back, but my friend might be able to give you some more information. Her name is Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Folks, this has been an interview with the one and only Susan B. Anthony. Next up, we have Elizabeth Cady Stanton right after this short break.
Thank you. Gary, what did you do with Elizabeth this time?
I'm here. Sorry, my car stalled.
It wasn't me this time.
Welcome back to History News 101. You just witnessed Susan B. Anthony and her story. Now we have Elizabeth Cady Stanton here for your learning pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to share my accomplishments with all those lovely viewers out there.
What's one of the greatest things you've done for women's suffrage movement?
Well, two things I take pride in is the Seneca Falls Conference. It was the earliest women's rights convention, and it started in 1848. At this convention, other women and I drew up the Declaration of Sentiments, as well as brought up the idea of women voting.
Really? That's interesting. I'm not familiar with the Declaration of Sentiments, though. Would you mind elaborating on what the Declaration of Sentiments is?
Of course. The Declaration of Sentiments is a document that outlines the rights that American women should be entitled to as citizens of the United States.
That is intriguing. Tell us some more about what you did personally.
Well, one thing I did was work with Susan B. Anthony on a militant paper called The Revolution. Later on, Susan and I found the National Women's Suffrage Association in 1869. I was the very first president.
It seems like you and Susan were pretty close.
We were. We even wrote the first 3 volumes of History of Women's Suffrage. I then worked with my daughter and published the Women's Bible in 2 parts. The first part came out in 1895, and the second came out in 1898. Sadly, I died in 1902 and wasn't able to finish my work.
So you weren't able to see the women's vote either?
Unfortunately, no.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you for letting me voice my achievements over the course of my life.
This has been an interview with Elizabeth Cady Stanton here on History News 101. Stay tuned for more about the women's suffrage movement.
Welcome back to History News 101 as we wrap up talking about the women's suffrage movement.
First on the agenda is to talk about the first state that ratified the 19th Amendment.
So which state was it?
Actually, it was Wyoming.
Huh. Well then where does Tennessee come into this?
Tennessee was the 36th state to ratify the 19th Amendment. This was probably due to Anne Dallas Dudley. She organized many of the protests in the state of Tennessee. And also Harry Byrne, who was a legislator whose vote was changed in favor of the 19th Amendment at the last minute.
Wow. I like this whole women standing up for themselves thing.
Yeah, most women do.
One more question.
Okay, what is it?
What exactly were protests like?
Usually the protests included aggressive agitation, relentless lobbying, clever publicity stunts, and creative examples of civil disobedience and nonviolent confrontation. Here's an example of one.
Women's work! Women vote! Women work! Women vote! Women's rights! Women's rights! Women's rights! Women's rights! Ah! 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 Huh. That's interesting.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think there's anything else that we need to cover. I think we've hit all the major points.
I think so.
So, I guess that's all for today on History 101 News.
Thanks for tuning in. See you next time on History News 101.
If you have any questions, comments, or concerns for us, don't forget to take your Pepsi can. Wait for the popping sound. Oh, look for the piece of paper that should be underneath it. Write your question, comment, or concern. Replace the can on top of it. Wait for the sound of screaming children. And then you will know that we got your comment or concern. Have a great day.
Have a lovely day.
Gary, you're fired.
Woo!